everybody. Stephanie from the Regional Clubs team at the Yale Alumni Association. Excited to be here with you this afternoon for another Yale Alumni Live. Happy Friday and happy Pride. We are very excited today to have someone who is going to share a story with us about their Yale journey and about the work that they are doing now to support children at schools, to provide them with some really fantastic literature. So I am going to add my friend Joe in just a second here, and we're going to learn all about Joe and what he's doing. So we'll give him a second. Hope everybody's having a good Friday, a good Pride Month. It's been beautiful weather around here. There he is.
There we go.
Joe, how are you?
Great. How's it going?
Good. I'm so excited to have you here with us today on this Friday afternoon, right before like a nice summery weekend, hopefully for a lot of people. So today is our Pride edition of Yale Alumni Live, and we are super excited to have you here with us today to tell us about Hope in a Box, your organization. And so if you don't know what Hope in a Box is, folks, Joe is going to tell you all about it, and then he's also going to tell you about his Yale journey. So we're going to jump right into it. So Joe, take it away. Hope in a Box. Tell us all about it.
Awesome. Well, it's great to be here. So maybe what I can do is I'll start with just sharing the overview of Hope in a Box and then a little bit about me and why I started it back in 2018. So we have a very, very simple vision at Hope in a Box, which is that every single student deserves to feel safe and welcome and included at school. Full stop, right? It should be that simple. It can be that simple. And we see literature as really the key piece of that puzzle, where in the hands of a caring teacher or librarian or school administrator, books have this incredible and unique, I think, power to open kids' hearts and minds and to really cultivate empathy. So Hope in a Box developed the first ever fully integrated program to help teachers and librarians build LGBTQ inclusive classrooms. So we send a curated box of books with LGBTQ protagonists and characters. We developed detailed curriculum for those books to make it as easy as possible for teachers to actually use them in their classroom. They're all written by experienced educators. They're tied to Common Core themes and virtual and in-person learning. And the third part is a whole set of data-backed professional development, training, community building, mentorship for our teachers. It's super important to us that we're not just sort of dropping a box of books on the front door and curriculum on the front door and walking away, but actually developing a relationship with our teachers and creating an opportunity for them to actually meet each other and to work with each other in all these communities sprinkled across the United States. So that's what we do. We currently support about 500 schools across the country. We're in all 50 states. We reach about 70,000 students. And ultimately, the goal really is to make LGBTQ inclusive education the norm, right? Rather than the exception in all public schools. So
that's a really incredible statistic, Joe. I just want to pause for a second and talk about the fact that you started this organization in what year?
2018.
2018. So, I know that we all kind of feel like we lost a year in there somewhere, but that's only 3 or so years ago, and you've already reached all 50 states, and you said more than 70,000 students. That's incredible. That's absolutely mind-blowing that you've been able to have that much growth in such a short time. I know you have a lot more to tell us about Hope in a Box, but I do want to just ask you if you could talk a little bit about the beginnings, how you kind of first connected to some of the teachers in the classrooms and what that was like, because 70,000 students is amazing, like just incredibly impressive. So tell us the humble beginnings of Hope in a Box.
Yeah, I grew up in a super rural town, like way upstate New York, 1,900 person town. And when I was growing up, I basically never watched or saw or read anything that I felt like really spoke to me as a gay person. And it would have meant the absolute world to me to have had like even one book in school or like one unit in class, history, civics, health, literally anything that acknowledged, LGBTQ people exist. Our community has always been here. It will always be here. And that is something that I, as a closeted person, could have embraced rather than been really scared of or seen as something that I should really hide. But I didn't have that. I left high school being pretty frustrated and confused, and didn't go back to my high school. I couldn't bring myself to go back to my high school for about 5 years until right after I graduated from Yale. and decided I should have an open conversation with some of my teachers about that experience and ask them, moving forward, what would it take to bring some of that positive representation to my school and to schools like mine, rural communities and lower income communities all around the country. And that was the start of Hope in a Box. So they said to me, and I was surprised by this, very pleasantly surprised. Yeah. They said, we would love to do this. Now, we don't like to see any student bullied. We don't want to see any kid ostracized in any way or feel bad about who they are, but help us figure out where to start, what resources to use, how we can do this in a way that speaks to students tactfully and age-appropriate ways. And from there, that was really where we started the pilot.
That's incredible. It must be really rewarding for it to have been at your school with teachers that you knew. And how did it grow from there, Joe? Tell us a little bit about the growth over the last 3 years.
Yeah, so we started with 10 schools, a lot of schools actually that we found through Yale classmates who had also come from small towns all around the country. There were a couple of schools in Kansas, some in Washington State, Texas, just sprinkled in different kinds of communities across the country, just to see, what would be the reaction to a very basic version of the program. It's a curated box of books with one-page curriculum guides that, we'll just see, right? What's the response? Is this interesting? And what we found, there was an overwhelming response from teachers who said, we love this. We have a bunch of things we want you to do better or do more of, which is great. We love to take that feedback from them. But pretty soon we had more than 100 teachers all around the country sign up on our wait list. And, we grew slowly from there until really in January of 2020, it was just an overwhelming amount of demand, which was great to see. But Matt, for me, I was, it was time to leave my other job on Wall Street and try and work on this as a full-time thing to grow it nationally.
That's incredible. So did you start with high school age curriculum and then move into middle school? So tell us a little bit about the grade levels. We started both middle school and high school. Every state does it differently, but in a lot of states, those are kind of, they're joined. My high school was at 7 through 12. Okay. So we thought that those age groups actually, there was a lot of overlap there, so it made sense to start. I am excited to say this summer we have someone working with us full-time, an intern from Yale, she's a junior at Yale, building out a elementary level program for K through 6. So we're working with a bunch of teachers and the Yale Alumni Educators Group, which is a great Facebook group, to build out that program. So that's coming soon. That's wonderful. I look forward to hearing more about that and that student experience. So speaking of the student experience, tell us a little bit about your time at Yale and what it was like to come from a small rural town to a place like New Haven and a university like Yale. What was that like for you? Was it a challenging transition? How long did it take before it felt like home for you?
It felt like home immediately. I know that's a cliche to say, but I had a great foot trip. The pre-orientation obviously makes a huge difference. I was best friends with a lot of my fellow footies the first year and beyond. Look, it was a very difficult transition, I think, in certain ways. Coming from a really small town, it was a Title I school. I was learning, I think, how to study and write a really good essay when, there were a lot of classmates who I think came from different backgrounds and had, pretty strong social networks when they stepped onto campus and already felt like, they were several years into their education. But I think in general, Yale is a very accepting place. I found it to be a very accepting and welcoming place, and thought that I had support from day one, not just from friends that I would meet on campus or through foot, but also academically. The professors, I wish that I had taken more advantage of just how open and interested a lot of the professors are in undergraduates, with office hours, with section, with small seminars. And I think that ultimately, that made it so welcoming. I think even freshman fall was probably one of my favorite semesters. Freshman fall and senior spring. Funny enough.
Bookends, yep.
They were my favorite semesters. I remember sitting on old campus and thinking, like, I can feel myself learning. Every day was just packed with new stuff, and in some ways I wish I could go back to freshman fall. It was great.
Yeah, that you can't replace that feeling of entering into this new community, just not knowing what awaits. So tell us a little bit about, I know you've had some really significant roles at Yale. So will you tell us a little bit about the activities and the things that you were involved in as a student?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I did, or the most time that I spent outside of class, was through the Yale College Council. I joined as a representative from my college, Davenport College, freshman year, was the chief of staff sophomore year, and I was the president my junior year. And I think, I mean, a lot of it came back to what I was just saying. I mean, I felt so much gratitude toward the university, and I felt really connected to it and wanted to do whatever I could to help make the academics or the social life, the university services better in any small way that I could. And that's really what pushed me to get involved in the first place. And then I just ended up meeting just such incredible people through the organization. I mean, some of my best friends today I met through the YCC, and I think that's what really pushed me to continue to get more and more involved. And I say that not just other people who are on YCC, but administrators and professors that I worked with in that role. I mean, I think they sometimes don't get enough credit, or they get a lot of criticism. The administrators at Yale are wonderful people, and they've dedicated their lives to the university and to doing well for all the students and administrators and other faculty that work at the university, and they are incredible people. So all around, found it to be really driven by just the exceptional people I got to work with.
So you know this, you and I talked about this a few weeks ago. We had Khalil Green on not very long ago to talk about his tenure as president. That was during a very tumultuous time at Yale, a very, unprecedented year. And you also experienced some challenges when you were the president. What would you say, I asked Khalil this as well, what would you say, is something that you're most proud of, or a lasting change that you affected while you were the president of YCC?
Yeah. And for context, yeah. So I was YCC president 2015 through 2016, which was when there was really in a long time, the first set of really big protests on campus related to institutional racism and just a reckoning with race on campus. That's when the conversations about renaming Calhoun College really came to the fore, and the renaming of the master title. So a lot of that happened during my time. It was a really hard time on campus. I think it was really noticeable. We saw the shift from my freshman, sophomore year, when it was just so normal to be in love with the university. And people had so much school pride. Everyone was wearing their Yale sweatshirts and stuff around campus. Everyone loved the game. To a really different feeling on campus of people being skeptical of the university and struggling with its history. So we watched that sort of happen right before our eyes. I don't think we've figured it out yet. I mean, the university deserves a lot of credit for putting real money and attention behind initiatives that are making Yale a more welcoming place, not just in terms of race and racial minorities, but also LGBTQ, gender, religious, national. And I do think it's to be commended for a lot of the work that it's done. But to answer your question, I mean, I think one of the things I'm most proud of was our push around financial aid. We really, really worked hand in hand with the admissions office and the financial aid office, the provost's office, to think about how do we make sure the experience for all Yale students is not overwhelmed by a need to pay off debt, right? There's so much that happens on campus that's such a rich experience, and it shouldn't be the case where a small subset of people have to work 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, and really at the expense of the social life and of their academics. And I think the work that we did there ended up leading to, I think in that year, about $2 million increase in financial aid that lasted in perpetuity. And we actually laid the foundation for what eventually became the Domestic Summer Award, which allows students now to get paid for unpaid internships or nonprofit or public sector internships now. And actually our intern at Open a Box is getting the Domestic Summer Awards. So anyway, it's a nice full circle thing. It's beautiful. Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the things that I'm proudest of my time at the YCC.
That's an incredible full circle story. And the fact that you yourself have an organization that you could host a student is really incredible. I think a lot of times when we're involved in things on campuses or in our professional careers, we don't always get to see it come to fruition, but what a rewarding experience to be able to do that. And so, you talked a bit about community and how far we've come. And I think, the fact that you are still actively engaged with Yale is really fantastic. And you had shared with me some of the resources from the Yale community that you've been using to grow Hope in a Box. So can you just tell us a little bit about, the great relationships that you've formed with other Yale alums with Hope in a Box?
Yeah. I mean, it goes right to the beginning of Hope in a Box. I think he's on here. I saw his name, but one of my best friends, Joel Burvell, we were friends since Bulldog days, even before we stepped on campus. But as I was first coming up with this idea, it was wonderful to see him kind of brainstorm with me as someone who'd seen my own personal journey from day one. And yeah, he's there. I see him chatting there.
Hi, Joe.
But that's really from the beginning. And then throughout, it's just been wonderful to work with Dr. Debs, who runs the Education Studies program at Yale and is just so thoughtful and has such deep expertise in the fields that we're working in. Alumni like Steve Bloom, who's been a close mentor of mine. And then also Cross Campus, which I know is a new program, a new platform to connect alumni with current students. And I've been using that actually to reach out to other Yale people who I might not know personally, but I see have really important experience either running nonprofit organizations or serving on boards. And that's been has had a wealth of experience or expertise that has come to the organization through that. And actually one of our newest board members, Mark Burns, was someone I reached out to cold a year and a half ago on Cross Campus, became a very close mentor of mine, and again, is now formally serving on our board. So all kinds of different interesting Yale pathways that have been unexpected in certain cases, but very, very rewarding.
It's incredible. I love hearing about the different intersections of Yale in our alumni stories. So thank you for sharing that, Joe. So I did ask Joe, everybody, if he would share with us some resources, some books, some literature. So Joe, take it away with what you have for us to share today.
Yes, you asked me for a Pride reading list. So it's hard to actually narrow it down. There's actually been so many wonderful LGBTQ inclusive books that I've come across over the years. One of my favorites is called The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. It's a retelling of the Iliad and the Trojan War through the eyes of Patroclus, who was Achilles' lover. And I think it does this really beautiful job of honoring the classic story and staying true to it, but kind of breathing new life into it through this new perspective. And I would highly recommend that to anyone. I don't really see it as like a gay love story. I just see it as a love story. It's universal, right? I think anyone can find a lot in there. So that's one that's always at the top of my list. Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin is another iconic book. I mean, James Baldwin himself is maybe one of the most important LGBTQ authors of all time and played a really interesting role also in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And Giovanni's Room is beautifully written and very powerful, speaks to an important time in our history for sure. And then I would also recommend, hopeinabox.org/books has a longer list, our curated reading list. There are 50 titles there. So if folks want to look there for all age ranges, if you have kids or you have nieces, nephews, whatever, there are also a bunch of other recommendations in there. So take a look there.
Perfect. I was just going to say, if anybody is interested in learning more, Hope in a Box, check them out. Obviously, a lot of great work is happening to grow, to reach all 50 states in such a short period of time is incredibly impressive. And I'm glad that you've been able to work with the Yale community to grow Hope in a Box. If anybody is watching, is interested, go check them out. Joe, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to you and hear your Yale story. Thank you so very much. And let us know what else we can do for you. And anybody else watching, Cross Campus is the LinkedIn for Yale. So go check it out. Meet awesome people like Joe. Thank you so much, Joe.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Great to talk to you. Bye, everybody. Bye.